The night was silent on the strange alien planet, the air thin and heavy. The sky filled with 3 glowing moons, a lone human explorer, exhausted and bruised from days of wandering, finally found shelter inside a dark cave. He had been searching for food, for water, for something that could keep him alive. But all he found was dust, ruins, and whispers of a long-dead civilization. Now, his steps echoed against the stone walls, his flashlight trembling in his tired hand. The cave felt different from others he had seen. There was a strange pulse in the air, like the rhythm of a hidden heartbeat. Every wall was covered in carvings, glowing faintly with silver light. Not drawn by human hands, but by something older, something powerful. He ran his fingers over the markings, feeling warmth radiate from them as if they were alive. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. Yet his chest burned with unease. A voice in his head kept warning him to stop, but another voice, filled with curiosity, pushed him forward. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of dripping water from the ceiling, echoing like whispers in the dark. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the cave itself resisted his presence. Then, his flashlight caught something strange. A massive chamber opened before him, wider and taller than any cathedral on earth. Pillars carved from crystal rose to the ceiling, reflecting his small light into 1,000 dancing stars. And in the center of the chamber, upon a stone pedestal, rested an object so majestic that he forgot to breathe. It was a crown, not made of gold or silver, but of black metal that shimmered with shifting colors. Strange gems pulsed on its surface. Like living eyes, watching him, it looked ancient, yet untouchable. As though time itself feared to destroy it, the man froze, his throat dry. He whispered to himself, This must belong to someone important. But there were bones scattered around the pedestal, giant bones, some still wearing fragments of armor. It looked like an entire army had died here, all protecting that single crown. Fear gripped him. But so did wonder. Why would anyone guard a crown like this? Why was it still here, untouched, as though waiting for someone or something? He stepped closer, heart racing with every footfall. The carvings on the walls began to glow brighter, responding to his presence. The air thickened, pressing down on his shoulders, but he couldn't stop. It felt as if the crown itself was pulling him closer, whispering without words. Finally, he stood before it, staring at the strange beauty of the artifact. He should have turned away, should have left the cave and never returned. But something inside him, curiosity, desperation, or perhaps fate, drove him to reach out. His fingers trembled as they hovered just above the crown. A deep silence fell, heavier than before. The air stopped moving. The cave stopped breathing. Even his own heart seemed to pause. And then, without realizing, his hand touched it. The instant his skin brushed the black metal, a shock tore through his body like lightning. He gasped, collapsing to one knee as power surged through every vein. The crown glowed, its gems flaring with blinding light. The bones scattered around the chamber rattled violently. As though the dead themselves had awakened, he tried to pull his hand back, but it was too late. The crown burned against his skin, yet it did not hurt. TT bound itself to him, fusing with something deeper than flesh. Visions flooded his mind, towering alien cities, endless armies marching under banners of fire, a queen seated on a throne of stars. He screamed, but no sound came out, only the echo of alien voices chanting. In his head, the chamber shook violently, dust and stone raining from the ceiling. A massive wall at the far end cracked, splitting open to reveal a sealed doorway. Behind it, a sound echoed, a low, chilling hum, like the growl of a beast awakening after centuries of sleep. The explorer staggered backward, clutching his chest, still feeling the crown's weight on his soul. He didn't know what he had done. He didn't know what he had awakened. But he knew one thing. with absolute certainty. From this moment on, nothing in his life, or in the galaxy itself, would ever be the same again. The cave had not been a shelter, it had been a prison, and he had just unlocked the door. The cave trembled as the sealed wall split open. Stone breaking apart with a sound like thunder. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe, but through the cracks came a faint glow, strange and alive. The human explorer, still weak from touching the crown, could only watch as the crack widened. Something ancient, something powerful was waking inside the chamber beyond. He stumbled back, heart hammering in his chest. The crown still pulsed in his hand, warm against his skin, as though it were alive. Then, from the shadows of the broken doorway, came a sound that froze his blood. It was a slow hiss, soft yet commanding, the sound of something not human, not natural, but royal. The doorway collapsed completely, revealing a vast chamber inside. At its center stood a throne, carved from obsidian stone and decorated with bones of creatures he could not name. Upon that throne rested a figure so tall and striking that he felt his knees weaken. It was a woman, or something that looked like one, though her presence was far greater. Far darker than any mortal, her skin shimmered with silver blue tones. Her hair flowed like liquid night, and her eyes glowed with golden fire. Armor of black crystal covered her body, sharp and elegant. As though forged from the stars themselves, she was breathtaking, yet terrifying, beauty and death woven together. This was no ordinary being. This was the alien queen. She opened her eyes fully and fixed them on him. Her voice echoed in the chamber. Low and dangerous, yet smooth like velvet. "Who dares touch the crown?" she asked, every word laced with fury and authority. The explorer tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He stammered, I didn't mean. I only," but before he could finish, the crown in his hand glowed brightly. And something incredible happened. From the shadows around the chamber, soldiers emerged, alien warriors clad in black armor, their bodies tall and muscular, their faces hidden behind helmets. They marched in silence, hundreds of them, their footsteps shaking the ground. And then, as one, they dropped to their knees, not before the queen but before him. The queen's golden eyes widened, her expression darkening. She rose from her throne, her tall form towering over him, her voice sharp like a blade. "No, impossible. The army, a T, kneel to you." The man shook his head, fear gripping his chest. "I don't want this. I don't even understand what's happening," he cried, but the soldiers bowed lower, chanting in a strange language, their voices deep and unified. The queen stepped closer, her long cloak dragging across the stone floor. Her eyes never left him, glowing brighter. Her fury mixed with something else, confusion, maybe even fear. "The crown of command," she whispered, her voice trembling with ancient knowledge. "It is bound by law, older than time. Whoever touches it, whoever awakens it, becomes ruler of the army." Her gaze hardened as she studied him. "And now, it obeys you, a fragile human. Do you even realize what you have done?" He swallowed hard, shaking his head. "I didn't mean to. I only touched it. I was looking for shelter, nothing more." But his words were powerless against the truth shining in the eyes of every soldier. The queen clenched her fists, her sharp nails glinting like blades. "If you wear the crown, then the army no longer belongs to me. It belongs to you." The chamber grew colder, the silence between them heavy with danger. The man could feel her power pressing against him, as if she could crush him with a thought. Yet the crown pulsed again. The soldiers lifted their heads, waiting for his command. For the first time, he realized the terrifying truth. He had become the leader of the deadliest force in the galaxy. The queen's voice lowered, dark and threatening. "You have stolen what cannot be stolen. You have claimed what cannot be claimed." she circled him slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "But do not think this makes you stronger than me. You may control the army, but I am their queen." Her words dripped with venom, but there was something else in her tone, something uncertain. She could not kill him. Not while the crown bound the army to him, and he could not run. Not with hundreds of alien soldiers kneeling at his feet. Waiting, expecting, demanding, the explorer's chest tightened, the weight of the situation crashing over him. He had not just touched a crown, he had awakened a queen, bound an army, and stepped into a war he did not understand. And as the queen stood before him, tall, radiant, and furious, she whispered a final warning: "You may command them. But power has a price, and soon you will learn what it means to wear the crown of the conqueror." The man's breath shook as he stared back at her. For the first time, he wondered if his greatest mistake had not been entering the cave, but daring to touch what belonged to the queen herself. And in that silence, deep beneath the alien world, the seeds of an unbreakable bond of fear, power, and destiny were sown. The chamber shook with the sound of armored feet. The alien soldiers filling every corner of the vast hall. They stood tall, their armor gleaming with strange symbols, their weapons glowing faintly with hidden power. Each one was larger than the human by several feet. Their presence terrifying, their silence heavier than thunder, and yet they knelt. Every single one of them, their heads bowed low, not to the queen who had ruled them for centuries, but to the human who had touched the forbidden crown, the explorers. Chest rose and fell in panic, his hands trembling. He tried to step back, but the soldiers lowered their heads even further, as if awaiting his first command. His heart pounded, his voice breaking as he whispered to himself, "This can't be real. I don't belong here. I don't belong with them." The queen's golden eyes narrowed, her anger simmering like fire behind her calm face. She stepped forward, her long cloak sweeping the stone floor. "They kneel to you now," she said bitterly, her voice echoing with venom, "but do not mistake their loyalty as yours. It is the crown they obey, not the man who wears it." Her words cut deep, but he could not ignore what he saw. Thousands of soldiers, warriors bred for battle, all waiting for him. The weight of that power pressed down on him like a mountain. He swallowed hard, fear gripping every thought. If he spoke, would they obey? If he ordered them, would they fight? A deep voice broke the silence. One of the alien generals rose from his kneeling position. Towering above the human like a living giant, his armor was marked with scars of 100 battles. His face hidden by a dark mask, he slammed his weapon to the ground, the sound booming through the hall, and in a language harsh and guttural. He declared his allegiance not to the queen, but to the human. The other soldiers followed, pounding their weapons against the floor in unison. The sound rolled like thunder, shaking the walls of the cave. The explorer's legs almost gave out. Beneath him, the noise so overwhelming that he covered his ears. But the truth was undeniable. The army had chosen him. The queen clenched her fists, fury burning in her eyes. "Do you see now?" she hissed, her voice sharp as steel. "You are bound to them. Their chains are yours. Their wars are yours. Their blood will flow for you." She leaned closer, her golden eyes glowing dangerously. "But power is never free. You will drown beneath it before long." The human shook his head, desperation in his voice. "I don't want this. I don't want armies, or crowns, or war. I only wanted to survive." But his words meant nothing against the ancient laws written in the crown's glow. The army cared little for his fears. They only recognized command. The generals began to argue among themselves, their deep voices rising like storms. Some praised him as the chosen. Others cursed his weakness, demanding a trial of strength. One slammed his blade to the ground, sparks flying. Let him prove himself. The warrior roared, "If he commands us, let him show the strength worthy of command." The chamber filled with unrest, voices clashing like clanging steel. The explorer looked helplessly toward the queen, hoping for mercy, but she only smirked, her lips curling into a smile both mocking and dangerous. "Yes," she said slowly, "let him prove it. Let us see if the crown chose a leader or a fool." The soldiers' eyes turned to him, glowing from behind their helmets. They awaited his answer, his decision, his first command as their ruler. His throat tightened, his breath shallow, but something deep inside him shifted for the first time since touching the crown. He realized he had no choice but to stand tall. He lifted his head, his voice trembling but firm. "I will not fight you," he said, his words echoing across the chamber. "I will not fight for your approval, but I will lead if I must. Not for conquest, not for pride, but to survive." The army froze, their chants fading into silence. The queen tilted her head, her sharp gaze fixed on him with new curiosity. His words were not the cries of a conqueror, not the arrogance of a tyrant. They were the words of a man who stood against fear. The generals fell silent, their arguments dying away, one by one. They lowered their heads again, accepting his command. The sound of their voices returned, this time chanting in unison a single word: Dalian. Ancient, powerful, repeated. Again and again, the human did not understand its meaning. But he understood the truth. They were calling him their ruler. The queen's smirk faded into something colder, deeper, unreadable. She looked at him not with hatred, but with interest, as though she had seen something unexpected. Her voice lowered to a whisper only he could hear. "You may have won their submission, human, but you have not yet won mine." The crown pulsed again, its weight pressing heavier on his soul. And in that moment, standing before an army of warriors and the queen herself, the explorer realized that his journey had only just begun, because power may have chosen him, but destiny was far from finished. The chamber finally grew quiet, the echo of the soldiers' chants fading into silence. The human stood trembling, his hands still shaking from the weight of thousands bowing to him. But even as the army lowered their heads in obedience, one figure refused to yield. The alien queen, radiant and terrible, remained standing tall, her golden eyes locked on him. Her face revealed nothing, but inside her mind, storms raged. For centuries, she had ruled this army with an iron will. Her crown had been the symbol of her absolute power, and now, with a single accidental touch by a fragile outsider, that power had been stolen. She could kill him where he stood. She thought one strike, one command, and his human life would end in an instant. But the truth was written in every bowed head around them. If she killed him, the army would rise against her. The laws of the crown were ancient, older than her throne, older even than her bloodline. The soldiers would not forgive such betrayal, not even for their queen. She clenched her jaw, fury burning inside her, yet even fury could not silence the question gnawing at her heart. What if the crown had chosen him for a reason? The human, unaware of the depth of her thoughts, tried to steady his breath. "I don't understand this," he said quietly, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "I didn't ask for your army or your power. I don't even know how to command them." The queen's eyes narrowed, studying him as if dissecting every word. "You speak like a child," she said coldly, her voice sharp as steel. "You hold the weapon of empires, yet you whimper as though it were a curse. Do you not see? You could conquer worlds. Entire systems would bow before you." The man shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes despite his fear. "That's not what I want. I never came here to conquer anyone. I just wanted to survive." Her gaze softened for the briefest moment, then hardened again. Survival. Such a human word, such a weak word, yet something in it stirred a thought she could not silence. For all her years of ruling, for all her endless battles and victories, had she ever truly lived for anything more than survival? She stepped closer, her presence like a storm pressing against him. Her voice lowered, no longer sharp, but heavy with meaning. The crown binds you to my people, but it binds me as well. I cannot kill you. I cannot command them over you. Yet, I will not kneel. Her golden eyes burned brighter. So tell me, human, what will you do? Will you sit upon my throne? Will you wear my crown and call yourself king of an empire you do not understand? The explorer's throat tightened. He wanted to say no, to throw the crown away, but when he looked down at the soldiers still kneeling, he knew the truth. He could not escape. They were bound to him, whether he wanted it or not, and if he abandoned them, chaos would follow, and blood would flood the galaxy. I don't know how to lead them, he admitted at last. His voice was low but steady. But if they follow me, then I will try. I'll lead them in my way, not yours, not with fear, not with cruelty. The queen tilted her head, her lips curling into something that was not quite a smile. Your way? She said softly, as though testing the words, do you believe kindness will win you loyalty? That mercy will win you war? Her laugh echoed. Dark and mocking, you are a fool, human, an idealist. The galaxy does not bow to kindness. It bows to strength and strength alone. But even as she spoke, a flicker of doubt stirred in her chest, because she had seen the soldiers' eyes. They had chanted for him not because he was strong, but because he had stood before them unarmed and afraid, and still claimed he would lead. It was weakness to her, but perhaps to them it was something else entirely, for the first time in centuries. The queen faced a dilemma she could not solve with blade or battle. She wanted to destroy him, yet could not. She wanted to hate him, yet something inside her whispered curiosity. Who was this fragile man who dared to speak of mercy in a galaxy built on conquest? She turned away sharply, her cloak sweeping the ground. Very well, she said, her voice cold again. Keep the crown. Keep the army. But know this, every step you take, I will be watching. Every word you speak, I will test. And if you falter, I will be there to claim what is mine. The man let out a shaky breath, his shoulders heavy under the invisible weight of the crown. He knew she despised him, yet he also knew she could not leave him. Their fates were tied now, bound by ancient law and unbreakable power. And as the soldiers rose slowly from their kneeling positions, their eyes glowing in the dim light, the queen watched him with a look that held both fury and something far more dangerous, curiosity. For perhaps, just perhaps, the crown had not betrayed her after all. Perhaps it had shown her a truth she had long forgotten. That strength could be more than conquest, and that even a fragile human might one day prove worthy of ruling an empire. The night on the alien world was not silent anymore. From beyond the horizon came the sound of war drums, deep and unrelenting. The queen scouts rushed into the chamber, their armor scratched, their voices urgent. They bowed quickly before the new ruler, but their words were for her. My Queen, an enemy fleet approaches. They know you are weakened. They come to take what remains. The human froze, his heart skipping a beat. Enemy fleet? Another army. He had barely begun to understand the one kneeling before him. And now another force was already on its way, ready to destroy them all. The queen's golden eyes flickered with cold fury. So, the scavengers come, she whispered. They think my throne is empty. They think my army leaderless. They are wrong. Her gaze snapped to the human, sharp as a blade. This is your moment, crown bearer. Prove you are not a mistake. The explorer's throat went dry. his palms sweating as thousands of alien soldiers rose to their feet. Their eyes glowed faintly. All waiting not for the queen but for him. He could feel the crown pulse on his head. Heavy, demanding. It was as if every heartbeat of the army was tied to his own. They would move when he commanded. And if he failed, they would die with him. He wanted to run, to hide, but he knew he could not. If he turned away now, everything would collapse. The queen's army would fall. The enemy would conquer, and his own life would end in the dirt of a world that was never his. He raised his head, forcing his voice steady, though fear clawed at his chest. Prepare the soldiers. We fight. A wave of energy rippled through the chamber. The soldiers lifted their weapons in unison, their chant rising like thunder for the first time. His words had commanded them, not the queen's, but his, and they obeyed. The battlefield was an open valley beneath the 3 alien moons. The enemy fleet descended like falling stars, ships black as ash, their engines roaring like beasts. From the skies poured their warriors, towering brutes clad in heavy armor, weapons glowing red. The air shook with their roars as they marched forward. Confident, believing victory was already theirs, the humans stood at the front lines. Surrounded by the queen's soldiers, every instinct screamed at him to hide behind their shields. But something deeper told him he could not lead from the shadows. If he wanted their respect, if he wanted survival, he had to stand where death would strike first. The queen rode beside him, her crystal armor glowing under the moons. Her voice was sharp as a blade at his ear. Your first command will decide everything. If you are weak, they will fall. If you are strong, they will kill for you. The humans swallowed hard, looking at the endless sea of enemies across the valley. He remembered Earth, remembered human wars, human strategies. He was no general, no warrior, but he was clever. And cleverness was sometimes enough. He raised his arm, his voice carrying across the army, hold the line. Let them charge. Do not break. The enemy roared, rushing forward, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The queen's soldiers stood like stone, shields locked, spears pointed outward. The human's heart pounded, and then, at the very last moment, he shouted again, now, split the line, let them through. The soldiers obeyed without hesitation. The enemy, caught off guard, surged into the gap. Thinking victory was theirs, but in seconds, the trap closed. The alien army encircled them, cutting off retreat. Crushing them from all sides, the valley exploded in chaos, the clash of steel and the roar of alien voices echoing into the night. The human stumbled forward, forcing himself into the heart of battle. His hand shook as he picked up a discarded weapon. Its weight strange but comforting. He swung clumsily, barely fending off a charging enemy. Fear coursed through him, but so did something else: adrenaline, fire, determination. The queen fought beside him, her movements sharp and graceful, cutting through enemies like a storm of blades. She glanced at him once, her golden eyes narrowing. You are reckless, she hissed. But there was a flicker of respect in her voice. The battle raged for hours. Under the moons, the enemy fought with savage fury. But they had not expected discipline. They had not expected human cunning. The trap tightened, the enemy ranks broke, and when the dust settled, the valley floor was littered with broken weapons and fallen warriors. The queen's soldiers raised their weapons high, their chant rolling like thunder across the battlefield. The human stood breathless, covered in sweat and dirt. His chest burning, he had survived. And more than that, he had led them to victory. The queen walked toward him, her armor stained with battle. She stopped only a step away, her golden eyes unreadable. You are dangerous, human, she said quietly, not because of strength, but because of the way you think. My enemies will fear you, but so will I. The soldiers knelt around him once more, chanting his name in their alien tongue. The queen did not kneel. But she did not look away either, and in that silent exchange, the human realized something he had never expected. This was no longer just survival. This was the beginning of a war, and he was at its center. The valley was quiet after the battle, but the silence was not peaceful. It was the silence of blood drying on steel, of fallen bodies left under the pale moons. The human stood at the edge of the battlefield, his chest heavy with the weight of victory. Around him, soldiers dragged the enemy dead into piles, their chants fading into low murmurs. For the first time, the army did not look at the queen for orders. Their eyes turned only to him, their new commander. He could feel the crown on his head, heavier now than ever, not just in weight, but in responsibility. The queen stood beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the horizon. She had fought fiercely. Her armor still stained with enemy blood, but she did not look at him with anger now. Instead, her expression was unreadable, half suspicion, half curiosity. At last she spoke, her voice low but sharp. "You fought well for a human. Clever tactics. Risky but effective." Her gaze flickered toward him. "But do not think this victory makes you invincible. The crown has bound you to my army, and my army is not loyal by nature. They will test you again and again." The human swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I didn't ask for their loyalty," T said quietly. "I didn't ask for any of this." The queen tilted her head, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "Perhaps not. But asking has nothing to do with power. Power takes, power binds, power consumes." Her words hung heavy in the air, and deep inside, he wondered if she was warning him or herself. Later that night, in the great stone fortress above the valley, the human was given chambers once belonging to alien generals. The walls were covered in banners of old wars, each one a reminder of victories bought with blood. He paced the room, unable to sleep, every time he closed his eyes. He saw the battlefield, the soldiers kneeling, the enemy's screams, the queen's burning eyes beside him. The crown pulsed faintly on the table, as if alive. He hated it, feared it, yet he could not deny its pull. Without it, he was nothing. With it, he was everything. He was still staring at it when he heard whispers outside his door. He moved silently to the corner, listening. The voices were deep, harsh. Voices of alien generals. "He is weak." One spat, "A human cannot lead us. He has no bloodline, no strength. The crown will twist him until he breaks." Another answered, lower and sharper, "Then we will not wait for him to break. We will test him, and if he fails, we will take the crown back, with or without the queen's blessing." The human's chest tightened, fear clawing at his ribs. He knew now victory in one battle meant nothing if he faltered even once. His so-called army would tear him apart. The next day, he was summoned by the queen. She stood in the throne hall, her golden eyes fixed on him as he entered. The soldiers lined the walls, silent, their gazes heavy. The queen's voice rang clear. "Your generals whisper against you," she said, not hiding the truth. "They plot to see if the crown's choice was a mistake. I will not stop them. It is not my place. The army follows law, not my will." The human's jaw tightened, his heart pounding. "So you want me to fight them?" He asked. The queen's smirk was cold, almost amused. "No, I want you to survive them. There is a difference." Her words sent a chill down his spine. She was not protecting him, but she was not betraying him either. She was testing him, watching him, weighing him. Days passed, and the tests began. The generals challenged his every order. They questioned his strategies, ignored his commands, forced him into impossible choices. He could feel their eyes waiting for him to stumble, waiting for weakness, but he adapted. When they mocked his lack of strength, he used his mind, creating tactics they could not predict. when they tried to isolate him. He turned their games against them, forcing unity where they wanted division. Every step he took, he walked on a blade's edge. Every word he spoke, the crown burned heavier, as if warning him of the cost of failure. And always, the queen watched. She never stepped in, never guided him directly, but at night, when the halls were empty, she would speak with him in quiet words. She asked of his world, his people, his values, and in return, she revealed pieces of herself, her wars, her victories, her endless burden of command. The more they spoke, the more he realized she was not only fury and pride. There was sorrow in her voice sometimes, sorrow hidden under layers of steel, and the more she listened, the more she saw he was not only weakness, there was fire in his words. Fire she had not expected from a fragile human, but whispers still haunted the fortress. The generals were restless, and one night, he overheard a new plot, darker than before. They spoke of a secret the crown's bond could consume him. The longer he wore it, the deeper it would sink. Until his soul was no longer his own, he staggered back, his breath uneven. The crown had not chosen him to rule it, had chosen him to burn. The queen found him later, standing alone in the chamber of the crown, his hands trembling. "You heard them," she said softly, her voice lower than he had ever heard before. Her golden eyes glowed, but there was no mockery in them now. Power consumes. That is its law. That is its curse. The human looked at her, his chest heavy, his voice barely a whisper. Then why help me at all? The queen's answer was quiet, almost human, because if the crown must consume someone, better it consume one who fights it than one who welcomes it. Her words struck him deeper than any blade for the first time. He wondered if she wanted him to fail, or if she wanted him to prove that even curses could be broken. The fortress trembled under the weight of betrayal. It began at midnight. When the moons were hidden behind thick clouds, the generals who had whispered for weeks finally acted. Doors burst open, flames lit the night, and the sound of steel clashing echoed across the valley. The human was dragged from his chambers by loyal soldiers, their voices urgent. "My lord, they rise against you. They mean to take the crown by force." His heart pounded, fear gripping him like a fist. He had known this moment would come, but not so soon, not so suddenly. The corridors were filled with chaos, soldiers divided, some chanting his name, others shouting for his death. The queen met him in the throne hall, her armor gleaming faintly in the firelight. Her golden eyes burned with fury, but not at him, her own army. "They defy the law," she hissed, her voice sharp and cold. They would tear apart the bond of the crown for their hunger of power. Fools. He swallowed hard, looking around at the fractured army. The loyal stood on one side, blades drawn, the rebels gathered on the other. Their generals at the front, their weapons dripping with hatred. The hall shook with their roars. Kill the human, break the curse. The crown belongs to us. The human's breath caught in his throat. He could feel the crown pulsing, demanding action. Every eye in the hall turned to him, waiting for his choice. Would he fight to keep the crown? Or would he let it go, even if it meant death? The queen stepped closer, her voice low. "This is the moment, human. This is where you decide if the crown owns you, or if you own the crown." Her words echoed inside him. He closed his eyes, memories flooding earth, the cave, the awakening, the battle in the valley. The crown had given him power, yes, but it had also chained him. It was a weapon of conquest, a curse wrapped in jewels. When he opened his eyes again, his voice was steady. "I don't want an empire," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "I don't want conquest. I don't want to be your master. I only want to end this blood." The generals laughed, their voices harsh and cruel. then you are weak. You are unworthy." They shouted, but the soldiers, those who had fought beside him, hesitated. They remembered the valley, his words, his courage, his refusal to lead with cruelty. The queen tilted her head. Watching closely, he could see it in her eyes. She did not know what he would do. And for the first time, perhaps, she feared the answer. The human lifted the crown from his head, holding it high in both hands. The hall gasped as its gems flared with blinding light. The generals froze, their eyes wide with hunger. The queen narrowed her gaze, her voice sharp as a blade. "If you give it up, you die. If you keep it, you live. Choose." His heart pounded. He knew she was right. Without the crown, the army would tear him apart in seconds. But with the crown, he would become something he despised, a tyrant in chains of power. And so he made the only choice he could. He slammed the crown to the ground, his voice ringing through the hall. "I will not be your king. I will not be your tyrant. If you want the crown, take it. But know this, I did not need it to lead you. I only needed to stand beside you." The crown shattered against the stone floor, its jewels exploding into shards of fire. A wave of energy tore through the hall, hurling soldiers to their knees. The generals screamed as the bond of the crown broke, their bodies writhing under the weight of its curse. And in the silence that followed, only one figure remained standing tall, the queen. Her golden eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. "You broke it," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "No one breaks the crown. No one resists it. Yet you destroyed it." The human's chest heaved, his body weak, his hands trembling, but his voice was steady. "I don't need power to command loyalty. I don't need a crown to be followed. They want to obey me, let it be by choice, not by chains." The soldiers lifted their heads slowly, first in confusion, then in awe, one by one. They dropped to their knees not because of the crown, but because of him. The queen watched, her face unreadable. For centuries, she had ruled by fear, by law, by the crown's unbreakable bond. But here stood a fragile human who had thrown it all away. And yet still, they followed him. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Perhaps humanity was always meant to rule, not by power, but by something greater. The hall fell into silence. The crown was gone, the rebellion crushed. But the choice had been made, and the human knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning, for he had broken the law of the crown. And in doing so, he had forged a destiny far greater than conquest. A destiny where trust, not power, would shape the future of an empire.